Hi there and welcome. I appreciate you stopping by. This is Jennifer McGuire. So today I thought I would share with you a fun, easy, and very fast way to build backgrounds on your cards using smaller images. This is a great way to get new looks out of any of the stamps that you may have. Now I'm going to show you several ways to build backgrounds. Most of the ways in this video involve using a template. However, if you don't have that template, stick around to the end of this video and I'll show you how to create a background without it. The template that I'm using for today's video is one that I've used many times in videos, and that is the Gina K Wreath Builder template. The Wreath Builder template comes in the original size and the mega size. I'll be using the Mega Wreath Builder template today. If you have never seen a video using these templates, I will link to a playlist up here on the top right. I like using the Mega Wreath Builder template because you can make bigger backgrounds. Now, although the name has wreath in the title, you can use these templates to create backgrounds very quickly, and that's what we'll do today. Along with the Mega Wreath Builder template, I'll be using my Misty stamping tool. This is the original size, and you can use any stamping tool you may have. Now you'll notice that this Mega Wreath Builder template is bigger and it hangs out of our stamping tool, but that's okay. If you notice, I just put it in as far as I can, close to the hinge, and then I just tape it in place. Parts of it will be hanging out, but that's okay. You can still use it and it works just fine, as you'll see in a moment. I find that by taping it in place, it just makes it a lot easier. And by the way, the particular template that I'm using here has a 6" by 6" opening in the center. Okay, so let's start with this example first. We've got a rainbow background that I created from individual stamps. I'm starting with a piece of white cardstock that is 6" by 6". This is Brutus Monroe's Not Your Mama's cardstock, which is a very heavyweight, high-quality white cardstock, but you can use whatever you may have. I'm using my T-ruler to find the center point of this piece. So 3 inches in from each side is my center point there, and I just made a little X with a pencil. Now the stamp set I'll be using is from Gina K Designs. I think this is such a gorgeous stamp set. It's the Embroidered Flowers. It's a large 6x8 set, and look at all the images included. In fact, I like this set so much that I'll be using it for several cards today. Okay, so I have my 6x6 piece of cardstock and I'm putting it into the opening of my template. And you can see the center point there with the pencil mark. I'm going to mask off a little triangular area using some purple tape. Any kind of temporary tape would work. And I'm going to stretch the tape from my center point pencil mark to this little corner on the template. And then I'll do the same above, from the pencil point to that little corner on the template. You can see right there where my thumb is. So I've created like a wedge in this background. Now I can stamp whatever I want in that wedge and repeat it around to stamp the whole background. So just stick with me here, you'll see how easy it is. Now I'm taking a piece of clear plastic and laying it over my background. I find that when I arrange stamps onto a background, it's easier if you put down a piece of plastic first because the stamps will stick to it and they won't move around as you try to position things. So now I'm going to fill up that little wedge there between the purple tape with as many stamps as I can. And I'm putting these so the stamp side is facing down, the back of the stamp is facing up towards the camera. I'm making sure to stay within that purple tape and fill it in as much as I can. I like to push my stamps as close together as possible so I fill up as much of the background as I can. Once I've filled in that entire wedge, I'll close the door on my Misty to transfer all the stamps onto the door. I then can take that plastic out so we can get ready to stamp. There you can see our wedge of stamps on the door. Now I can remove that purple tape and we'll save it for our next project. Now we can do our stamping. Since I've never used these stamps, I like to use a dry cloth to kind of rub the surface, and it helps to take the ink better. I'm using a bunch of different colors of Gina K Designs ink today. Any ink would work for this. I'm going for a soft rainbow on this particular card. So I've put my white cardstock into the template opening. Remember, this is 6x6, and I'm starting with my first color, this is Dusty Rose, and stamping the first wedge. Once I've stamped that, I can go ahead and turn my paper one turn in the template. So watch, I'm going to turn it so it's one turn to the right. Then I can stamp my second wedge. Now you could do each of the stampings in the same color to get a solid background, but I thought it'd be fun to do a rainbow going around. This time I'm using peach Bellini and stamping that. Once I'm done, I can wipe my stamp clean. All I use is a microfiber cloth, rotate my paper one more time to the right, and then move on to the next color. So you'll see that very quickly, I'm able to create a rainbow background that fills that entire 6x6 piece because I just created that one wedge using this template. I like to start with 6x6. You could start with the smaller template and a smaller piece of cardstock. But with 6x6, I can then trim some pieces off and make a typical 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card. And then I have extra pieces or strips that I can use on another card. Okay, so now I've gone through and I've done the whole rainbow here. I'm going to fill in that last wedge, and there we have our completed background. Only took a few minutes to do that, and I think this is so much fun. And since I have those stamps in place, I'm going to make several backgrounds at once. But before we move on, let's go ahead and turn this background into a card. So I just trimmed that background down to be 4 by 5 1/4, and I added it to a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch white note card. At the center, I used some Gina K silver metallic cardstock and die cut a heart, and I white heat embossed a sentiment on it from a Gina K card kit that I'll show you a little bit later in this video. I thought that sentiment was beautiful. So I really wanted a soft look on this card, so I didn't use any black ink or bold colors, and I wanted it to be simple. Now on my next example here, I'm going to take the same background but step it up just a little bit. So I created a background exactly like I did on the last one. But this time I'm going to add some color to the white around it so that each little wedge of stamping has color behind it that matches. I'm using the same purple tape to mask off a wedge of stamping. I'll then use my Pink and Main Ergonomic blending brush to apply a soft layer of color over it. It's the exact same color I used to stamp, so in this case it's Dusty Rose. I ink up my brush, tap it off on my glass surface, and then just bring it lightly to my paper. And you can see how easy it is to blend that soft color on top. So I'm just adding a little bit of matching color behind the stamping. I then wipe off the purple tape, and then I move it on to the next area to ink. I'm finding that these Pink and Main Ergonomic brushes are really working well for me. I find it's so easy to control how much ink you put down and get perfect blending. And I like that I can easily just wipe it off on a dry cloth and move on to the next color, so there's no need to have a bunch of them, although I will admit I bought several so that I can have them on hand. If you have any other kind of inking tool or blending brush, you can definitely use that for this same technique. Okay, so I'll continue to add the ink onto the background using the same color that I used for the stamping and just cleaning off my brush in between each. By adding a little bit of color to the background, it kind of pulls the background together even more and adds more interest. Now for this particular card, I used a sentiment from the Gina K Be the Rainbow stamp set. I really appreciate the heart behind the stamp set because you can create simple cards with the rainbow, and the sentiments are very encouraging, such as look for the rainbows, you are going to be okay, wishing you every shade of happy, you are loved, you are not alone, I am here for you even when you think you don't need me. Lots of great encouragement in this set, so you can make a quick card for someone who may need it. Well, I used the message that says you're on my mind and in my heart for the center of this particular card. I stamped it with black ink on a white die cut heart, and then I added all of that trimmed down onto a white note card. Remember, I could keep these backgrounds bigger and put them on a bigger card. So if you like making 5x7 cards, there's a bigger Wreath Builder template included in the set, so you can make backgrounds big enough for that size card too. Just wanted to trim these down for today's examples, but later in this video I do show a larger square card. I also added little white gel pen dots to the background for some added interest. Okay, for my next example, I used this same stamp since I already have it set up, but I wanted a completely different look. In this case, I started with black cardstock and added stamping on top with a technique that I haven't used in some time, but I really like to do. So this is a 6x6 piece of Hero Art's pitch black cardstock, which is my favorite dark cardstock. And I'm going to stamp the same stamps, the same wedge of stamps, with Hero Art's Unicorn White Pigment ink. I'm going to double stamp my white pigment ink because it's getting old and a little bit dried up. So by double stamping it, I get more white ink down. I'll continue to do the stamping all the way around the background, so everything will be in white. So you'll see I stamp, then I stamp again, then I make one turn in the template. You can see how easy that template is to use even though it's hanging outside of the MISTI. This template does fit in the big memory MISTI, but I know most people have this size, so I wanted to show that here. Okay, so I'll continue to stamp around and check out the beautiful white stamping that I get on the black cardstock. I could leave it as is, but I wanted to add a little glow of color. I cleaned my stamp very well, and now I'm stamping on top of all of that white ink with bright colors of Gina K ink. So I find the bolder the color, the better with this. So I'm using here Passionate Pink ink, and I stamped it onto the white ink. And you can see how it gives a tint of color to it. And as the inks dry, it intensifies a bit. If you want the color to be more intense, you could double stamp it. So stamp 2 layers of the color on top of the white. This isn't going to go super bold color. It's supposed to be kind of a soft tint or glow. If you want more bold color on a dark cardstock, I would recommend doing colored heat embossing, or you could get a little more color using Distress Oxide inks. But this is a fun trick of stamping first with white pigment ink and then on top of it with a bold dye ink. And you get this fun glow of color. Isn't that beautiful? Especially there with the pinks and the blues. Once again, I wanted to keep a simple card design so a lot of the background would show. For the hug sentiment, I used this new die set from Pinkfresh Studio. It's called Phrase Builder Sending. It has all of the words included and the shadows for each of the words. It's one of those great value die sets because so many words are there. So you can do sending good vibes, sending hugs and kisses, lots of different things. I just decided to use hugs today. I used the hugs to create a white and black sentiment. Now I wanted to add little white finishing strip touches to the bottom and top of my background. Here's a trick to getting them straight. I use my T-ruler and I run my liquid adhesive right along the edge of the T-ruler. I then take a thin strip of white cardstock and push it up against the edge of the T-ruler, and then I'll be sure that it stays put and it's perfectly straight. It doesn't curve on me or go at a bad angle. It's really quick and easy to do, and I added one to the top of our background too. So for this particular card, my background is cut down to be 4 1/4 inches wide and 5 1/4 inches tall. And I added it to a white note card that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I added those 2 white cardstock strips and then my hugs die cut. I cut the shadow with white cardstock and the hugs with black. I also put a pearlescent vellum heart die cut behind that and a few little pearls. You can see the glow of that color on top of the white pigment ink. It makes for a really interesting look that looks completely different than our last examples. Also notice that I trimmed my 6x6 background down so that the center is off-centered. So you can see it's over there to the left. It's just another advantage of making a bigger background so you can trim it down however you want. Okay, my next example is very simple. I show how to do the same technique, but just to get one solid background using a fun embossing powder. Once again, I have a 6x6 piece of white cardstock in the same template. I have a little pencil mark at the center point, and I'm stretching my tape from the center point to the 2 corners on the template, just like I did before to create that wedge. This time I decided to use a different stamp set, and it's this beautiful, elegant, classic set from the newest Gina K card kit called A Big Hello. This is just one of the stamp sets included, and it's the one that I used on this card. You can see there's that large hello, which I am just crazy about. I'll be using that a lot. And then also the more elegant, solid images that I thought would be fun with the specialty embossing powder. Now this stamp set is part of Gina K's newest kit, and I thought I'd show you the kit, even though I don't get a chance to use all of it in today's video. One of the reasons I like Gina's card kits is they're packed with a lot of good tools that you can use over and over. This particular one has 2 large 6x8 stamp sets, the big ones, a 4x6 traditional stamp set, a stencil, a bunch of cardstock, and coordinating dies for the stamp sets. So this is something that you can use over and over and get a lot of different looking cards. There's a bunch of different styles included, so I feel like you can get a lot for your money. So again, I only use one stamp set in this kit in this video, but I'll try to use the others in a future video. Okay, so I have that same wedge as before, and I'm taking that large image from the stamp set, and it fits nicely into that wedge. And then I'll just fill in some of the open spaces with smaller images. Notice that the point of the wedge is empty. That's okay. I'm leaving an open spot there in the center where I can add my sentiment. This time I have a 6x6 piece of Hero Arts sand cardstock, but you could use whatever you have. And I'm using an anti-static powder tool since I'll be doing heat embossing. I'm stamping my images with Versamark ink, and I thought it'd be fun to use a specialty embossing powder for this. So I'm using my Verdigris embossing powder from Ranger. This has beautiful aquas with like gold and silver in it, and it just gives a gorgeous antique-y look. There are a few different embossing powders like this, and I'll link to them below if you want to check them out. So I'll go ahead and heat set that, and look at that gorgeous shine that you get. So now I'm putting it back into my template so that I can stamp my next wedge and heat set it. Now you could do the stamping for multiple wedges and then do the heat embossing, but I'm always afraid I'm going to mess it up. So I usually like to stamp, heat emboss, stamp, and heat emboss. But whatever works better for you. Just be sure to use that anti-static powder tool so that you don't mess up your background and you get crisp, clean results. So I'll continue to do my stamping and heat embossing until I complete the entire background, and then check it out. There's even a spot in the center for my sentiment. Okay, so now for the sentiment, I wanted to stamp there. My sentiment is bigger than the opening, but that's okay. I'm going to stamp on top of the embossing that we already have, and we'll make sure that we get good results by doing multiple layers. So I have my Hello stamp. This is from that kit. I love this stamp. Using my anti-static powder tool, I'll stamp that with Versamark ink, and I'll just be sure to press firmly because I want to get in the nooks and crannies of the heat embossing below it. I'll add some Hero Arts white embossing powder, tap off the extra, and then I'll heat set it. Now it'll be bumpy and not look so nice in the areas where the white overlaps the background embossing. That's okay. What I'll do is let it cool, put some more anti-static powder tool on it, stamp it again right on top with Versamark, and add another layer of white embossing. I'm actually going to do this 3 times. What this does is gives more dimension to our white, makes it smoother, and then we don't have the bumps behind it because of the embossing in the background. So I love to double and triple a heat emboss. It really makes a big difference in getting smooth dimensional results. It doesn't take too long, and in this case, it's definitely worth it. Oftentimes I would just put a die cut sentiment in the center, but I really wanted to use this stamp, and it's a great reminder that you can create 1-layer cards with layering doing this. Okay, so I trimmed that background down to be 5 1/4 by 5 1/4, and I put it on a 5 1/2 inch square white note card. I then added little gold foil pearls from Studio Katia to kind of fill in the pattern on the background and just add some shine. Now I will mail this in a 6x6 white envelope. It does require extra postage, but I think it's worth it for a card with all that gorgeous embossing. You can see that how that specialty embossing powder really makes a difference here. You can also get similar looks by mixing different embossing powders together when you do the embossing process. So this background started 6x6. I did trim it down to 5 1/4 by 5 1/4. So I have those extra strips that I can save for some scrap cards that I'll do in a future video. I really like to save those extra pieces. Okay, my last example here is another of using individual images to build a background, but this time I'm not using a wreath builder template. I am again starting with 6x6 white cardstock, and I'm using my T-roller to draw a pencil line down the center in both directions. So at the 3-inch point, where those 2 lines cross is the center of my paper. I'm putting this into my MISTI stamping tool, and I'm arranging some of the stamps from that embroidered flower stamp that I like so much into one of the 4 areas. So just in that corner area, the top corner of my white cardstock. So I'm staying in between those pencil lines. And this time I didn't fill in the whole area. Instead, I just did a cluster of flowers there. I transferred the stamps onto the door of the MISTI, and now I'm inking up the stamp with Versamark ink, and I'll stamp it into that first corner. After I've stamped it, I'll go ahead and add white embossing powder. This is Hero Arts white. You won't be able to see it since it's white on white, but I promise it's there. Now I'll go ahead and heat set that and put the cardstock back into my MISTI, but I'm going to turn it 1 time. So I'll turn it to the right 1 time, So now my heat embossing's on the bottom right, and I'm going to stamp on the top right. Use my anti-static powder tool, stamp with Versamark ink, add my white embossing powder and heat set. So I'll continue to do this 2 more times for the other 2 corners. So with this method, we're stamping it 4 times in a circle. When we use the Wreath Builder template like before, that was 8 times. So you could do more colors and get a bigger background with that, but this is also another alternative. So on here is my white embossing. It's hard to see in the video, but I'm putting little marks at the halfway point on each side. So at the 3-inch point on each side of this cardstock. The reason I'm doing this is I want to mask off the 4 areas to do some inking, and I want to make sure that it's perfectly straight. So by putting the halfway point on each side, it'll save me a lot of time. Once again, I'm going to use purple tape to stretch from one pencil mark over to the other pencil mark on the other side. Sorry my head gets in the way, but I really wanted to make sure I got it lined up just right. So I went pencil mark to pencil mark in both directions. So now that top right corner is masked off so I can ink over it. In this corner, I'm using my Ergonomic blending brush to apply a light amount of Gina K Sea Glass ink. And then I decided I wanted the ink to be heavier or a little bit darker towards the center. So I'm going to go back and add more ink towards the center and let it fade out to the edge. It's very easy to do that with this brush. I find that you can easily control that color and you can quickly apply just how you want. Now I'm going to use a dry cloth to wipe the excess ink off from the white embossing and from the purple tape. The white embossing is resisting that color we're putting on top, and it gives that gorgeous white on color look. Now I'm going to move my tape over so that I have the other corner masked off. This time I'm using Gina K Lucky Clover Green ink, putting a light layer down and then going back and adding heavier color towards that center point. The nice thing about Heat Embossed Resist, which I'm doing here, is that you can use pretty much any ink on top. I'm using a dye ink here. These are Gina K Dye Inks, but you could put Distress ink, Distress Oxide ink, or pigment inks over it, and the white embossing will resist it. So for this one, this is Gina K Powder Blue ink, and then in the last corner, I'll do the green apple ink. So each time I just wipe the excess ink off of the white heat embossing, and we end up with this multicolored background that we were able to quickly make using the building background idea. I had considered die cutting a large circle from this, but ended up just deciding to trim it down to be 4 by 5 1/4 so that I can add it on to my typical note card size, since I have a lot of envelopes that fit that size. So it's what I make most often. I added it to a white note card that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And now I'm using that same Pinkfresh Studio die set to create the hug sentiment from white and black cardstock. I also created a sentiment strip with black ink and white cardstock, and this is from the Be the Rainbow stamp set that I showed you earlier. I'm adding it with foam tape right over our die cut sentiment, and I'm using a T-ruler because I want to make sure that I get it perfectly straight and centered. I then added a few white pearls into the pattern of the background for accents. So with this example, you see another way that you can build a background using smaller images and just stamp them repeatedly. So I hope this video shows that you can get new looks from your stamps, lots of different looks, by using them to build backgrounds. If you are interested in whatever I used today and you want to take a closer look, they are linked below in the YouTube description below to multiple sources. Also in the middle here, I have my playlist for my Wreath Builder template videos. I tell you, that tool is one of my most all-time used tools, and another video that you may like. I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a good day, and we'll see you again very soon.